Hello. Just getting everything set up. Okay. I just have myself on mute as I'm like, talking to children and just scratching down on paper. So you should be able to hear me. Morning, everyone. I'll probably give everyone a few more minutes to log in because it is daylight savings time. So I'm sure there's many people getting up and going, oh crap, wrong time. Um, I have a poll that I will link to again in the chat. Let's see, copy link. Just seeing, who has a Cloud9 account already. I'll probably get really started at 9:45 because, as I said, it's going to take people a little while to actually log in. Until then, you should be able to go to the chat. The chat is at tlk.io/PyLadiesDC. Can't do slashes with my little screen sign app, so that's why it says a slash there. Go there and chat to everybody. And make sure you get into that because that's where we're going to be able to ask questions and things like that. If you have any questions now that you'd like me to eventually go over, if you go to the Hangout on Air and you're looking at it through Google Plus and not YouTube, you should see a Q&A app. I believe there's a bunch of little squares at the top of your screen. My screen looks different, but you should be able to click on that, and one of the apps will be Q&A, and you can submit questions. Under Showcase, there's a bunch of links. So it'll have a link to Cloud9, it'll have a link to the chat, it'll also have a link to a few other things that we'll go over in a little bit. But you can start just checking those out. For now, I'm going to mute myself again, and if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the chat or wherever else you can get a hold of me. Hi, everyone. So, welcome to Let's Learn Flask in Your PJs. And I figured we should get started. Looks like we have a good crowd. Just to review, I want to go over how this is set up. This is a Hangouts live on air, so I can't hear you, but you can hear me. And I do this because they have limitations on how many people you can have in a room. Like I think it's 10 at this point, 15 if you give Google money. So because it's so small, we do an on-air one. Because you can't really communicate with me very well, we have a chat room. The chat room is at tlk.io/PyLadiesDC, and you should be in there. Even if you don't feel like chatting, that's where you're going to go to get immediate help. There are a few features to the Hangout on Air if you're looking at it through Google+. You don't see these if you're actually in YouTube, I believe. But if you're in Google+, there are a couple of apps you should know about. If you click, I think it's above, there's a little icon with little squares. If you click on that, you should see two different apps. The first is the Q&A app. That's where you can submit questions to me. Know that those questions should be more like, long-term, like, hey, can you go over this? Can you use Flask to do this? That kind of stuff, things you're curious about, or if you want me to re-review a topic, that's where you would ask that. There's also something called Showcase, and that has links that are important to the class. So there's a link to Cloud9, there's a link to the Flask website, link to the chat room, that kind of stuff. For the chat room is where you're going to go to get immediate help. So if you have an error or something, that's where you need to go, because I'm only going to check the Showcase app when I'm like taking a break in between modules. So go there, get immediate help. Know that I believe that I'm running this without any assistance. So I will try to keep an eye on that to see if there's any errors, but I will also be stopping pretty often to check the chat room to see if anybody's having any errors. If you have an error, so if you have like a traceback or something, you want to post some code, you need to go to dpaste.com. Don't just paste the code in the chat room. Go to this wonderful website, dpaste.com, paste your stuff in there, hit paste it, and share the link that is generated. And that link, everybody can see the code. So of course, don't put anything personal in there, but I don't think we're going to be dealing with too much security right now. But that's the better way to share code and tracebacks and things like that with other people. So the way this class is going to work, I'm going to teach Flask using a GitHub repo. And if you've never used GitHub, GitHub is, hold on a sec. The sound volume is up. Can someone or Katie speak? See if I can hear. Let me see if Han can hear me. So we're going to be using a GitHub repo. GitHub is basically, Git is a way to store your code. GitHub is a service that people can use to store their code like online and their projects. And we're going to be checking out this repo, and I'll go over how to do that, and looking at the individual commits, because this is a ton easier than typing in all the code and having to deal with, white space errors and stuff like that. So we will be checking this out, and I'll go over all of this. Don't worry about it. Actually, let me add this link to our showcase. Edit, because I don't want you to show my image. There. So for this class, we're going to be using a service called Cloud9. And Cloud9 is an online IDE. And first of all, full disclosure, they've not given me any money. I'm not like promoting them, you know, there's no kickbacks here. I just really like the service, especially as someone who's had to debug way too many Windows machines and debug too many machines remotely. So Cloud9 is an online IDE. Not only is it an online like IDE, it has the server, it has, you can actually host it and you can push it out to other people, and you can even push to other hosts. So if you make something you like, you can push it out to Heroku, which is really neat. It's very easy. You will need a Cloud9 account. It is free. And honestly, you can do a ton of stuff with just the free account, and there's no ads or anything. They just know that you'll love it and probably upgrade. And it works anywhere. So if you have a Cloud9 account and you're on one computer and then you switch to another computer, as I do because I have a work laptop and I have 2 other laptops around the house, it'll save your state. It'll save like what you had open, even where your cursor was. So you just kind of can pick up and move on. So that's what we're going to be using today, because it makes life a whole lot easier on me rather than getting pip and git. And anybody who was at the last Flask class probably remembers what a terror it was trying to get everybody installed with pip and git and even the correct version of Python. This will do it for you. So let me see. I don't see any questions. Here, let me close the showcase at the moment. There. So right now, I want to start off with going over a little bit about what Flask is. Flask calls himself a Python micro framework, and if you're wondering what the heck a micro framework is, I believe they made up the term. I haven't seen it anywhere else but with Flask. But basically, it's unlike like Django, which is a framework. A micro framework is more of a collection of tools, which is what Flask is. Question. We're going to be working with 2.7, but you don't need to have anything installed because we'll be working with an online IDE. Everything's going to be in the cloud. So goodbye, have fun getting rid of children. With Flask, it comes with like a bunch of different tools, like, generate a web page, deal with templates, a lot of the stuff you'd really kind of need. It's lighter weight than Django. It's much lighter weight than Django. If you've ever worked with Django, you kind of have to get into a Django frame of mind. I love Flask because it's very Pythonic, and if you can write a function, you can write a Flask app. Really, the only thing they add is something called a decorator, which adds extra functionality to a function. So that's one of the reasons why I really love Flask. You also do not need a database to work with Flask. So if you have something like here, my little screen sign app right here, this is a Flask app. It's a very silly Flask app, but it was something I needed to run classes that sometimes I need to have text on the screen. And weirdly enough, there was nothing online that would just put text on the screen as a web service. So, up here I have a Google font and I have the text that I need pasted up there. So as I said, for that, I don't need a database. I just need to make a couple web calls and, be a little intelligent about how I deal with like URLs. So, and Flask is perfect for that. Now, with Cloud9, when you want to start like a new project, you create a workspace, and every project should have its own workspace. So right now, go ahead and open up Cloud9, and I'll give everybody a second to get in there and get logged in, and shout at me if they do not have an account and they are having trouble. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is click Create a New Workspace. And this is all so tiny. Let me make this a little bigger. Come on. Okay. Well, maybe not. There we go. Click Create New Workspace. Oh, and by the way, if you sign in with your GitHub account, I don't know how many of you have a GitHub account, but you'll see over here like all the things that you are working on in GitHub, which is kind of funny to me because it's like blast from the past, stuff I wrote years and years ago that I haven't cleaned up. So click Create a New Workspace. And you can choose to create a new workspace, or you can clone from a URL. So if you want to clone like a GitHub project, sorry, dog's woofing. Now let me try cloning from URL. Now if you go to clone from URL, you can get, they have a bunch of different options. So you can do just an HTML5, PHP, Python, and Django, which we'll be doing next time. There's just a bunch of different options, and then we'll install some stuff. Sorry about the dog. Everybody's leaving, so he's going crazy. Hold on a sec. Let me quiet him. Sorry about that. So what you can do is you can create a blank workspace that doesn't have anything in it really, or you can actually put a GitHub repo in there. So what you'll want to do is go to the Flask class, and I'm going to post this link in the PyLadies DC chat. And there, it's posted in the chat. And that's why it's important to be in the chat, because I'm going to post links up there. And it's going to go ahead and create a Flask class. Now, when you want to start actually working in the workspace, you click Start Editing. And it'll open a new window. And it's loading. And here we are. If you've ever worked in Sublime, this looks very much like Sublime. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pause for a second and see that everyone is caught up and has everything like, up, and that everybody is at this screen where they're looking at some code. So Okay, it looks like everybody is fine. So I want to go over some of the parts of what we're working with here with Cloud9. So up here, like in this window here, this is where all your code is basically. This is your editor. Down here, this is your terminal. So this is just like a terminal that you would work with on a server or on your computer. So you can even do like an LS and see, okay, here's all my stuff. You can run a Python shell given that you can spell Python. So there's a lot of like, down here is where we're going to be running a lot of stuff. Up here is where we're going to be coding. And as you run things, you'll have like little windows pop up down here. So the first thing we're going to do, because we're running this right now, we're looking at the end of the class. That's what all this code is. It's where we're going to eventually end up. But that's not really where we want to be. We want to start at the beginning. Somebody needs help. Copy link. So at this point, we need to actually go back in time, which is one of the nice things about using Git is you can go back in time. This is probably not a traditional way of using Git, but it works really well. Now, if you're not familiar with Git, don't freak out. We're only going to be using like, I think 2 commands. So one thing you can do is do git log, one line, not online, one line. If you hit enter, you can see every commit that I've done from the beginning of this repo. So, and each one has this little thing right here, and we can use that to check out particular commits. We can basically check out, roll back the code to that point in time. So, like here was the initial commit. Here is, adding basic files, that kind of stuff. Creating a template. So if I do, so the first thing we should probably do is I'm actually going to need to set up something really fast, which I almost forgot. Pip, I'm going to do this real fast and explain what I'm doing. I need to move my head. Come on. There we go. Up. Oh, stupid Max. Hide. So the first thing we need to do is that we have Python installed, but we don't actually have Flask installed. Because if we go Python and say import Flask, we're going to get an error. We don't have Flask installed yet. So what we need to do is install Flask. And we can actually go ahead and install a bunch of things. Right now, we're just going to install Flask. So do pip, I believe this is how we do it, install Flask. It might give me an error, but we'll see. Okay, it does. In Cloud9, the command is sudo pip install Flask. You normally would not do this on your local machine, but they have things set up differently. And just trying to help someone out. All right, and we have, oh, and the first part of the class is always the most hinky for an online class because you're trying to help everyone out. So for everyone else that is set up in Cloud9, you should be able to do sudo, and I posted in the chat, sudo pip install Flask. And if you're not familiar with pip, pip is another part of our stack that we're working with. Pip is a way in Python to basically go out to various repositories, usually PyPy, but you can actually point to like internal directories, like I've had to do at some jobs. Can't seem to get the command to find with a cursor. It'll go out and it'll actually grab like, okay, what things do you have called Flask? Okay, I found the thing called Flask and I'm going to install it. And I will not only install that, I will install all the dependencies because if you scroll up, you'll see things like what it installed. Ah, here it is, installing collected packages Flask, workzug, and it's dangerous. So Flask has a couple of dependencies. If you install something like Django, there's a bunch of dependencies. For most things, there's like other dependencies. So it goes out and it just grabs those automatically, which is like magic because when I was in school, we didn't have anything like this. You just kind of had to read through everything you had to install and do it in the right order. So let's see. Invalid. Ah, I see what the problem is there. No, no, no. Come back, Cloud9. Come back. Okay. So at this point, I do want to test, and I usually do try to test every time I install something. I'll usually just open up a Python prompt and import. I'll try to import the thing that I was, installing, and it works. And this is kind of like, why would you do this? If you've ever worked in more complicated environments, you can sometimes install something but your Python that you're using doesn't know where it is, and you can get things all screwed up. So that is, if you do a pip install and it installs correctly and then you can't import it, that usually means your system is like a little wonky, and you need to do some serious debugging. And oh, by the way, to get out of the Python interactive shell, I'm hitting Control D, which of course you can't see. You can also do exit with 2 parens. See, that gets you out of it. All right. Okay. So at this point, we've got Flask installed. So we can actually use it now, making this smaller. And I'm going to very quickly create a new file. Now, you don't need to like copy this because you're going to get lots of code later. Don't worry about this. I'm just doing the most simple Flask app ever. It's on the front of their webpage. Now there will need, and I'm going to show, let's see, hello.py. We'll save that. I've created a Flask file called hello.py. Now the first thing I'm doing is I'm importing Flask from Flask. This is a kind of common thing in Python, which is silly, but you'll have like a module inside of it that's the same name. But you have to import Flask, capital F Flask. We have to create an app that is going to store a bunch of our stuff. It's going to basically be running everything, knowing what to call when, that kind of stuff. Like you can put configurations in there. So this can look like a little bit of magic, but this is basically saying, you know, make a Flask app. Now we have something that looks like a function. The function's called hello, and it returns hello world. But before it, we have a decorator, which is the @ symbol, which basically means I'm going to add some extra functionality. For this one, I'm going to use our app and route, which so routing is how we interpret like URLs. And we only have like the /, so this is at the root of our site. This is what we're going to show at the root of our site. We could also have /stuff/ whatever, and it'll basically create all these like paths. And at the bottom, a little bit more of magic, and you've probably seen this in other Python files where we'll say, you know, if name equals main, call main. Instead, we're saying app.run, which means run the Flask app. Start the web server, start serving a website. Now, if we run this now, it's not going to work. It'll work on your local. If you're working on like your local machine, it won't work here. But I'll show you what happens up here. You actually get a new window down at the bottom, down here. And it says, oh, your code's running, but it has this important, it gives you some errors because we need to do something a little special with Flask. And I'm getting the magical thing that I need to add. So right now we have app.run. I'm going to comment that out and replace it with this. It's giving me an error. It's not, there's no invalid syntax. Perfectly fine. So what we're saying here, app.run, and we're basically getting some environment variables from the actual like server we're on. Because remember, we're not on our local, we are on the cloud. We also need to add one thing up here. Import OS. And if you've never used OS before, it's just a very useful Python module that deals with operating systems. So it can actually look at the operating system and figure some stuff out. So let's see, we should run and it should work. Oh, I see what it's complaining about, derp. Smart quotes. Smart quotes are horrible. As I said, don't try and copy me right here because we're going to get lots of code later. By the way, if you are a blogger, stop using smart quotes in your code. They're pretty everywhere else, but not here. So we'll run it again. And down here, it should be working. Ah, hello world. Oh, and if you click the links down here, it'll open like a little browser of its own. So at this point, you know, we can see that all it did was basically create an HTML file and it plugged hello world in there. If we go here and we change hello world to hello hi ladies and save it, and run it again and reload this, it says hi, hello Pi ladies. So this is a very simple, like, you know, way of using Flask. This is basically the hello world of Flask. So, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to need it in a little bit. Now I'm going to pause for a moment to see where everyone is to make sure everyone's caught up. Okay, and also important to note, you do need to force saves. It's not like Word, where, or Google Docs, where it'll save your work as you go along. That would be disastrous as a coder. So you do want to do like a Command S or Control S, depending on what operating system you're on. So the first thing we're going to need to do is, before we get really started, is this is not going to work, obviously, because that app.run does not look like my other app.run. It's not going to work. So what we're going to do is create a new file, or we can do file save as. We're going to create a new run file called run2 because we're very creative. Oh, and I've just got a few questions about Git. It is. All right. So now we have run2. Now for everybody following along, you're going to have the regular run and you're going to have run2, which is the one we're going to need to use. And I'm just going to paste this in here, and I'm going to go to dpaste and paste this so everybody can grab it. Okay, in the chat, there's a link, and that's our new run2. And I have somebody who's having an issue. No application seems to be running here. So let's see. You should have to be able to hit run, this little green button. You should be able to hit run, and there should be some kind of thing down here. Now, if you have an error in your code, then you're probably going to get an error from, what's it called, from Cloud9 that'll say, I don't see anything. Now, one thing we can do eventually, if we are having a lot of errors, is we can collaborate. So if you go over here on this side of the page, no, wait, I'm mirrored, up here. If you hit collaborate, you should be able to invite people. Let's see. Share, here's where it is. I'm sorry, it's the share button. So if you would like to invite me, then move over here. My cloud name username is kcunning, just like my Twitter, just like everywhere else. So you can invite me right here. And I can then see your workspace and help you out and help debug things and move things around if something has gone weird. Let's see. Let's see. Now, if you try to run what we have here, it's not going to work. We'll get to that because there are things that are missing that aren't installed yet. So before we get to all that, go back to your terminal. So if you go back to your terminal, remember how we did git log one line, which I always spell as online, and you have all these commits? The first thing we're going to do is select this one, and I'm going to put that link, okay, in the chat in a second. So what we can do is we can do git checkout and then that commit, and it'll roll back our code to that point in time. And you'll actually see files like disappear. Now what's nice is our run2 doesn't go away. So let's see. I'm gonna move my face back down, move face, there we go. And make this smaller again, and let's see what we have here. Oops, sorry. I keep forgetting that hitting Control W does not just close that window like it does in Sublime, because it does look like Sublime. So we can ignore this. So we have a folder called app. An app is going to hold something called views. Now originally I showed you just one file that had a bunch of code in it that looked like this stuff. That's great for like a really simple app. I would not recommend doing that because it becomes really hard to maintain after a while. So the first thing is I have a folder called app, and in it I have a blank init.py. Is it blank? Oh no, it isn't. It actually has stuff in it. Init.py usually is just blank. You throw it in there to say, yeah, treat this folder like a module. In this case, I actually put stuff in it at the recommendation of other Flask people. So this is where I import Flask. This is where I create my app. And this is where I say, yes, import the views in this folder. Views are basically our functions with the decorator. It says, what information am I going to spit out to the user? So here we're importing the app, and some of this will appear like magic until you get used to like the structure. Like most structures are, it looks really overkill when you first start working with it. We have app.route, this is just the base of our site. We have a function called lucky static, and we're going to return your lucky number is 7. Now remember, we need to run run2.py. If you do run.py, it's not going to work. The reason I have us working off of run2 is because Git ignores any files that it doesn't know what to do with. So it'll keep like messing, like if it decides, if I change run.py as I go along, I'll actually lose and I'll have to keep redoing this one line. It'll keep just getting rid of that change. It won't touch run2 because it doesn't know about run2. So let's go ahead and run it and see if it works. Now I might get an error. Oh wait, did I already have it running? No. Sorry. I wish there was a way to override like closing windows. See, it's great that it looks like Sublime. It also sucks that it looks like Sublime. Yes. I got a bunch of errors, which I didn't get last time, so I just need to take a look. Address is already in use. You get this error if you have like Flask already running, so you can't like run it more than once. Just because we only know about one port, like it's sending to one like little window, one port in the server. So let me try running this again. This time it should work. It is! Look at that. So this time I'm not going to open it up in the fake browser window. And it's running! All right, so now that I know that I'm running, let me see that everybody else is running. So to review how we got to this point. The first thing we did is we had to go back in time by doing git checkout and then the number here. So let me put that. Sorry. Git checkout and then crazy numbers. Basically the hash for that checkout. So we check that out and that rolls us back in time to a point of a much simpler Flask app where all it's doing is serving some text. Then we take that, we create a run2.py. And the run2.py, there's a dpaste in the chat that says what it needs to be. Basically, we need to import OS, we need to import the app. And by the way, that run2 needs to be in the same directory as run.py. So app.run, and it has a bunch of stuff just to make it work with Cloud9, because Cloud9 is a server, it's not your local machine. Once you have run2.py saved, and you do need to save it, click Run. And click Run. You should get a window that says Flask class run2.py, and you should be getting something like this. Now, you can get, like, I have everything set up correctly, but I still get the important use this and this as the host on your scripts. I am, it's just, it'll put that out there each time. Once you have that, you should be able to click on this link, or you can do a command or a control click to open up a new window, and you should have a window that looks like this. It says, your lucky number is 7. Mine isn't big enough so that you can see it, but yours is not going to be very big. So I'm going to create a poll real fast. And it's always funny with this, the first like hour of getting everybody set up feels so slow, and then once everybody's set up, we fly. We get an amazing amount of stuff done. Just like with most new environments, takes a while to get used to. Even if you're doing this like on your local or whatever, it's the first hour is always the worst. Oh, good. So we are getting caught up. See results. And most people actually have the Your Lucky Number 7 page. Yay! Okay. Let's see. If everybody is patient during this time, go get some coffee or something, because I'll just getting a few people caught up. Get link. And yes, you should have checked out. Oh, at this point, we should be rolled way back in time to a very simple app that all it does is serve one web page, and all it says is your lucky number is 7. So this is all you should see when you open up views.py. And you can change this. You can change this to 28. Now, if you change this to like 28 or something, you do need to hit run again. You can either hit run up here. Oh, nope, nope, sorry. Yes, wrong. You need to go down here to where it says Flask class run2.py and hit the little reload button, and it'll reload the script. It should say now, my lucky number is 28. So at this point in time, we've got a very basic Flask app. Almost everybody has it up. I think we're all caught up at this point. And this is nice. But one of the things that we need to do now is I want to stop running run2.py. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move my head, move head, move. No. Oh, Max. There. Ah, good. We have a dpaste. All right, checking out somebody's dpaste. Let's see. Run2.py from app import app, no module named app. Let's see. So I'm basically asking somebody to share with me because they're getting an error, and sometimes like dpaste, I can totally see what's wrong. Other times, no. And I have a feeling I know what's wrong. Let's see. And I should be getting an invite somewhere. checking my dashboard. I think that's where it shows up. Ah, look at all the people that are sharing with me. Okay. And I will need to know your username because as you can see, I have many people that are now sharing with me. I'm just waiting for a response. But to show you what it looks like, hold on just a sec. I'll be right back. I'm back. I just had to check on my dog. All right, so let's see what's going on here. And as you can see now, I'm no longer in mine. Well, it's really tiny. You probably can't see that. But I am now in their workspace. Ah, and I see the problem. Run to is in the wrong location. So you need to move run to, and oh, I think I can do this. Yes. Run to basically needs to be in the same directory as run.py. So yeah, I'm in read-only mode. So if you move this to be in the same, you can drag and drop it. I can't, as you can see, it doesn't allow me. But that needs to move because of course there is no app.py because it's in the wrong directory. It only knows, it's not that smart. So and got a few more questions. And to see the website, it's basically, you can go to the top of this window, the Flask class/run2.py. It says your code is running at blah, blah, blah. You can also, the shortcut is like flask-class-yourname.c9.io. And view.py is in the app folder. Because we're putting everything in folders. So they have nice little homes. Because eventually we're going to get more files. So at this point, we've gone way back in time. I'd like to move up in time a little bit more. So I do a git reset hard, or git reset. Let's do a git reset. Git check out master. Let's see, there was a trick to doing this. Now, as you can see, what I had to do is I had to do a git stash to get rid of my changes. If you didn't make changes, you don't have to do this. I just had to do it because I made changes. I didn't want to save them. I don't care about them. A git stash basically takes your changes and stores them for later if you want to do something with them. So I did a git stash, and let's do a git log one line. Go down to the bottom again. Now the last commit we did was this one. Here, I want to add a template because right now Flask is using its own templates. It's basically, and all the template is, it's like, I don't know, just put it in a paragraph tag and deal with it. So it's not really using intelligent, nice templates to make everything look nice. So we're adding a basic template. And I'll put this commit up in a second. And I'm going to put that in. So the first thing you need to do, and I'm just typing everything up here. I've put 3 commands in the chat. Git stash, if you made any changes, git checkout master, and git checkout our new commit, which is, it's the one right above, bunch of letters, begins with C27. So at this point, there's a trick you can do with Git, which I really like. I guess it's not really a trick, it's a feature. I'm typing clear just to clear my screen off. Git diff head 1. What this does is I want Git to tell me what is different between where I am now and 1 commit ago. Before I realized that this was a thing, I'd never really internalized what that meant. I would go and like have to do between 2 different commits and the different hashes. It's silly. Now what we see here is basically everything that was changed. And what we've done now is we've added templates, which are basically HTML files that have spaces for information, and they have a different syntax. And we'll look at the syntax as we go along. So we have, when you see new file mode, that means I've created a new file. So I've created there's a new folder under apps called templates now. And we've created a template called simple.html. Sorry, this is jumping around. Called simple.html. And it's just a really basic HTML file. It says HTML body, you know, welcome to your lucky number generator. Your lucky number is 5. We've also added, now here we've taken a file that exists and we've modified it. So we've taken our views.py file and we've actually modified it. And if you see a plus sign, that means I added that line. A minus sign means I've removed that line. And what we've done is we've added the line from Flask import render template because we're going to need to actually tell our view to render a template instead of just spitting out information. And we have added a new view, app.route/tpl. So we've added a subdirectory, and basically it's returning render template simple.html. So it's just going to use that template and spit that out. So let's see how this works. So Q to get out of this, go over to run to, go ahead and run it. Now if we go here, lucky number 7, I'm just at the base of my site. But if I go to /TPL, oh, it's so big. There we go. Now we have my template. You can actually see my template, and it's just a very basic HTML file. It's basically serving an HTML file. This is one of those things I try to keep in the back of my head that you can do with Flask, because occasionally I do need just to serve some basic HTML files with nothing else going on in them. And here it says, welcome to your lucky number generator. Your lucky number is 5. So does everybody see that? I'm going to give a second because I know I have a little bit of a lag between like you seeing what I'm doing and me saying stuff. Okay. So that's nice. Serving basic HTML file or like simple HTML files is fine. But what we really want to do with templates is combine it with data. So, and that's one of the powerful things that Flask and really any web framework should be able to do, because that's why we have them. So at this point, we're going to go through the same thing again. Git stash if you made any changes, which I didn't. No local changes to save. Git checkout master. Puts us forward in time. It'd be nice if we could just hop up, you know, each commit, but we can't really do that in Flask or and with Git. And Git log one line. I'm going to get my next commit because we are going to add variables. So I'm going to do a clear to clear my screen and do a git if head tilde 1. Because I just want to see what's changed between this commit and the last commit. So we have changed the template simple.html. We removed, you see a minus sign, it's removed and it's red here. So we removed the 5, nope. And we added something called lucky num, and it's in the middle of curly brackets, which are above your square brackets. So you have curly bracket, some text, and then curly bracket. And that's basically a variable. The template, when we render it, is going to expect that Flask is going to give it a value, and it says, ha, this is lucky num, put this in the lucky num spot, and it'll put it in that spot. We have also changed our view. So now, instead of just rendering simple.html, we create lucky num, we create a variable called lucky num, and we render the template simple.html, and we send it lucky num. And we have to use this syntax. So the syntax is lucky num equals lucky num. Now you could call lucky num whatever you want. You could call it num, you could call it apple, you could call it whatever. But you have basically, you have to put a value in that, you know, for the template. Now, for some people, this feels very weird because we're returning a function, but this is a very common thing when you start working with web frameworks, that you will return functions or, so you'll say, okay, here is what you need to do, and it'll actually, Flask will take that and all the information in it, and it'll do a bunch of stuff with it. This is really common. It kind of threw me off when I was just starting coding and I would see this and like, it weirded me out, but you get used to it. So let's see what this actually does. We need to go to run.runpy, reload. And now it says your lucky number is 6 because if we go over to the file and views and we make this go down again, go down. Here's where the magic is happening. App.route, the TPL, basically I created a new path. The lucky number is equal to 6. We're rendering the simple.html template and we are sending the value in LuckyNum to LuckyNum because we've created a variable in the template called LuckyNum and it's expecting a value and we're sending it 6. So going to take a pause to make sure everyone is caught up. Now, I had forgotten about the Q&A app. Let me see if I have any questions here. Okay, none. Good, then I didn't miss anything. Yay. So to review, I just put a bunch of notes in the chat, but you'll want to do a git stash. You'll want to git checkout master. You'll want to git checkout to roll back in time. Git checkout 4859570. Then on the terminal down here that says flask run 2.py, you'll want to hit the reload. If you don't reload, it's going to keep running the old code forever. So it's at this point that you can kind of start to see where a lot of the power comes in, that you can, combine some very simple Python and some simple templates and combine them to create things that are quite powerful. I am going to get to the next point in time. Git stash, but I didn't actually save anything. Git checkout master. Git log. So let me see. Hold on a sec. I'm going to try something because I think somebody is on the wrong, I think some people are on the wrong one. Git status. So Git status, for anybody who's not familiar with Git, is just a good way of saying, okay, what's going on. It'll show you what you've modified, what files are not being tracked, and if you're at master or if you're at a different head. Here, it says head detached at this commit, which basically means you went back in time. I don't know what you want to do with this, have fun, but right now you're not really working like where I would expect you to be working. Because if I'm at master and I go do a git status, and it says on branch master instead of the detached head at whatever. So git log one line. Now, one thing that's very important to remember when you're working with Flask, it can be very easy to start falling down the path of like forgetting that all you're working with is Python. So all the tools you have that you would normally use with Python are there. It's one of the beginner's mistakes that you forget that, hey, you're just working in Python. So we are going to actually, now that we have a random number generator that we keep saying is generating random numbers and it's not, we're going to go ahead and actually generate some random numbers. So git checkout my new commit. All right, somebody got back to me. You should be fine. So let's look at the difference. Git diff head going back in time one. So you can see that we edited views.py and we've imported from random import randint. If you've never used random, it's a module that has like basically every random thing you could ever think of needing to do. And randint will return a random integer between one number and another number. We've removed a bunch of lines. I actually removed, lucky, the TPL one, and I've gone back to the root of the site. So now we have a new, now we've edited like the base of the site. Our lucky number is going to be a random integer between 1 and 10, and we are going to return symbol.html and the lucky number. This is not a huge change. We're just actually making it random. So now that we're at this point, we need to reload. And sometimes it'll reload for you and sometimes it won't. I found it's just a good habit to, never trust anything and reload it. Now, if you go to your site and you try to go to TPL, you're going to get an error because there's no more TPL. We took out that route. We took out that view. It's all at the base of the site again. So welcome to your lucky number generator, lucky number of 6. And if I reload it, I get a 1, I get a 9, I get a 4. It'll just keep spitting numbers back out at me. So I'm going to put those steps up here. just to reiterate, no more /tpl. Just go to the base of your site, which should be flask-class-your name, like your username, .c9.io. And I'm going to take a few minutes break to get some food because I did not eat food this morning. And I will be back in just a few minutes. I'm back with my extremely healthy breakfast of Girl Scout cookies. So let's see. J.A. Stark. Huh. You know what? You shared your thing with me. I'm going to look at it. Now looking at one of the people's. Aha. 5C505D. Yep, that's where we should be. Run 2.py. Reload. All right, I have cookies in my system. So at this point, you can see that, you can use any Python thing, any Python module that you've been used to, and even ones that come from other sources. Within reason, there's only so much that the poor little, web servers can do. But if you're dealing with something like, I think even like pandas and stuff like that, you should be able to spit information out. I don't know if you can get just a, pretty graphs. You'd have to push it to something else, like one of the nice JavaScript graphing things. Um, um, and just a reminder, every time we make changes, reload run2.py. So this window, Flask class run2, hit the reload button. Even if it says something like reloaded, it's a lie. So many times I've run into that and it's like, yeah, it was actually a lie. You needed to reload it yourself. And that's just a thing across like Python frameworks that they'll often say, oh yeah, it's reloaded, except for this other stuff that we don't really keep track of. So at this point, you can see that, you can just use Python. And to get data in there, but there's more stuff we can do. So I'm going to get back to master, go forward in time, get log one line because I need my next thing. All right, we're going to add another view. And what we're going to do with this new view, div head 1, is we are going to get information not from the function, but actually from the URL. So have you ever been to like a site where it's like, Twitter/your name, so Twitter/Cake Hunting, Twitter/Jackie Castle, that kind of thing. You can, it's basically getting information from the URL. So the user types in a certain URL, we grab information from it. Now, all we're doing in this one is we're adding a new view, which is basically adding a new web page. And this is going to be at /something/. So we have max in here, but max is in angle brackets. You can see this here. What this is going to do is Flask is going to take whatever is in that angle bracket, and it's going to use that information. It's going to store it into a variable called max. So here we have our new view. Lucky max accepts one value called max, which we're going to get from the path. Our lucky number is going to be a random integer between 1 and the integer value for max. So max will come in and it'll be a string because that's the safe way that Python imports things. We need to convert it to an integer. Now, I'd probably do lots more safety stuff, like make sure it actually is an integer, do some, funky things. In this, I don't care, whatever. We'll let the person break the system. And then we're going to return the template simple.html and the lucky number. So we're actually reusing the same template over and over again, which is why it's called a template. So let's go here, and I'm going to reload it. I reloaded it, and I'm going to go to /100. If I keep reloading this page, I'll keep getting lucky numbers up to 100. If I change this to 5, and I'll just get lucky numbers between 1 and 5. And if I make it like big number, then I get big numbers. So let me go and put all of that into the chat. So we can get values from the URL path, and you can actually have really complicated ones where you can get a bunch of information. So it might be that we'll get, the username, and then, like for instance, I think that on Twitter, one of the things you can get is like Twitter/kcunning, Twitter slash your channel, Twitter handle slash, I think, mentions is one of them. Used to be. But I think they switched it all around, but at one point it was like your name, and then, who, when you had been mentioned, who your followers were, that kind of thing. Um, oh, well, yeah, they switched it to slash I, but back in the day, back in the old days of Twitter, that's how they did it. So you might have like more information you could get. Just remember that everything that comes into your application from the URL, it's just being treated as a string. That's it. So you're going to have to convert it if you need to change it into an integer or a float or whatever you need to convert it into. So let me go back to the chat. Go back to my code. And you do want to try and reuse templates. That's the point of them. It becomes really a hot mess if you suddenly have all these templates. If you have like 9 million templates and 9 million views, it makes it a lot simpler just to have a few templates that are very well maintained, that are easy to maintain. Trust me, you don't want to be in the business of tracking down where that one extra div is. And I'm going to take a second and check out the Q&A. Okay, no questions, good. And I'm just seeing that everyone is caught up. So I don't see anybody freaking out quite yet. Yay! Oh, people see at this point everything we've shaken everything out, all the weird issues, and now things start to go really quickly. So I'm going to check out master again. And you don't need to do the one line thing, although it's really useful. I'm doing it. So now we can put information into a template. We can get information from the URL. Now we're going to add some logic to our templates, and and not like huge logic. You do not want most of your like programming logic to end up in the templates. You want to do most of that like in your views and just spit the information out. But there are forms of logic and forms of flow control that you do want in the template. That's why he's having an issue. Me? No, I am back. Okay, so I'm gonna reload this to see if I have any new. There we go, good. Start editing. And I have a feeling somebody's in the, like you ran it from the templates directory. Okay, I see what's going on. Close this. Yeah, close it. Close this. Yeah, I'm closing all your stuff. I'm sorry. Run. Let's see, where is this extra thing? Because what I'm seeing here is that basically it was run somewhere else. So let me see. I need to move my head again. Get up there. Address already in use. So it's somewhere, yeah, that's fine. No, why am I not seeing all of the... Wonder if it's giving me that error because I'm running something. No, it shouldn't be. But yeah, if you see this, it's because somewhere in the templates directory or somewhere you're running somewhere that you shouldn't be. So let's see. Well, one easy way to do this. This is a weird one. I wonder if there's a way to restart preview with a web server. No, it's not what we want. So it looks like we have something is running and I can't find it. So close all tabs, close. This we shouldn't need because we have templates up here. Yeah, these should go away. But I don't see any windows. That's weird. I wonder if we can restart. Sorry, just doing a little bit of debugging. Keyboard mode. Oh, sorry. So basically there's already like a process running. And I'm about to stone cold, like, yes, I wonder if PS works. PS should. What I'm doing is I'm saying what's running. I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to do anything with this, but let's try opening up run2.py again. All right, I'm going to go to the tried and true. Google it. There we go. And none of these seem to be that issue. Let me see. All right, I don't really know what's going on here. So I will try to debug this. You might just want to restart like your entire instance. I wonder if you can just quit and close all files. Yes, close everything. Close it all. All right, nothing should be running at this point. Open up run.2, run it, because there's some process somewhere that's running and I don't know where it is, and I don't really want to spend any more time like trying to debug it, and we'll try to fix this after the class. But for now, we've kind of got to move on because we only have like a half an hour left. So I will try to fix it later. I'm hoping it'll like, if you maybe log out and log back in, try that. I think that actually stops your processes. So at this point, we're going to add in some flow control. So we've got our next thing that we need to check out. If head back in time 1. All right. So in this template, we've added a new template called game.html, and because you can see new file mode, we've created a new file, and it says HTML body, welcome to the game, the winning numbers, and here this should look a little familiar. No, get back up here. And you can't really see this on the screen, so I'll bring up the file, but there's something new going on here. Then we're creating a new view called game. So it'll be at your site /game, since that's where our route is. And we have an empty list called game nums. While the length of game nums is less than 5, we're basically going to be adding random numbers to it. And if that number is not already in the number in nums, we'll add that one to the list. And we'll keep doing that until we have 5 unique numbers. Then we are going to return game.html and the game numbers. So let me open up this template for everyone to explain what's going on here. So this looks pretty normal. Here's where things, look a little different. We have curly bracket, %sign. And when you have things with curly bracket %sign, that means it's some kind of functionality that you're putting into the template. It could be a special tag, it could be loops, it could be if statements, it could be all kinds of things, but it's basically functionality. For num and game nums, we're getting a list of game nums, and so we're going to do something for every number in game nums. And what we're going to do is spit out num and a space. So, and then we have, unlike Python where you have a for loop where it's like for, do stuff, then you're done, you actually have to declare the end of the for loop in this because HTML doesn't care about white space or enters or whatever, So you start with this. You have for num and game nums, you have stuff, then you have the end for. And what we're doing for each number is we're basically just spitting out that number. So let's go ahead and go to run.to, run it. And this time, we're going to go to our site, /game. And here it has the winning numbers. So we got 2, 5, 10, 8, 4. And if we reload, get 8, 10, 9, 1, 6. And we'll just keep getting a bunch of, unique numbers that it'll print it out. So that's how you would add a for loop. So let me add this to the chat. So this is just one of those nice little functionality things that you can add in. So you can iterate through lists. You can even do like, list items if you want them to all appear in a list. You can even have like huge chunks of code. It does not need to be just a tiny bit. For loops for any kind of list of thing that you would want. So if you had a grocery cart, you might have or a shopping cart, you'd have for every item in the list, that kind of thing. So it's basically for showing a series of things that are in a list. which we're all familiar with, but that's how you do it in templates. And actually, if you learn it, all the template stuff you're learning here is pretty much how you do templates everywhere else in the Python world and other worlds. We use basically the same templating system. I've not run across too many that are vastly different. Like they may have like use a hash mark instead of a %sign, but honestly at that point, okay, you just have to know that you use the hash mark. So let's move on to the next bit real fast while everybody else is getting caught up. Master. Oh, that's right, I can do that. So we've been making like all these templates, you know, game.html, simple.html, but almost all your pages, like in a website, are gonna have some things in common. So they'll have something like, you know, similar headers, similar footers, navigation. You don't want to copy and paste it over and over again because you will eventually get a need where it's like, oh, I need to make this one change. You know, to this one Java, you know, switch from this one CDN to another CDN for this JavaScript file, and oh crap, now I'm, you know, changing hundreds of files. I did have to do this at NASA one time, and we had a website that was how the developer decided to organize everything, and it was hell. It was not good. So you want to, you know, take advantage of templates and break apart your sites and break apart all your like templates so you can put them together in ways that work for you. So here I've created a new file called base.html, and all it is HTML body, you know, HTML body, and then I've created a block, and the block is basically a placeholder. It's like, here, block content, and we can put stuff there. And it's called a block content, not because its content means anything special. It could be called, you know, apples. But with the content is a way of saying, put this information here, because you can have multiple blocks in your templates. So here we have our base. We've created our base template. If we go down, I've modified game.html, and I removed like most of it. If you look, like I took everything out and I've basically rewrote it. First I say it extends base.html. We have to say what file we're extending, that we're going to take that file and we're going to use it and we're going to start plugging information into it. You can have more than one base. If you have a need in your website, like if you have a front end and a back end, often you'll have completely different structures for those. Like you'll have different JavaScript files, you'll have different everything. So yeah, you could have like more than one base.html. You're just like base one, base admin, base front end, that kind of stuff. So we're extending base.html. And we are declaring here is our block content. So take our block content and put this information in their block content. And all we say is, welcome to the game, the winning numbers, and it shows the numbers. So it's basically what was up here, but now we're wrapping it into block content. We've also done the same thing for simple.html. We're extending base.html, and oh, this red block here is just white space because Git hates white space. And you know, we're extending base.html again, and here is the block content for this page. So we can take that content and stuff it in there. So let's see what this looks like. And you know what it's going to look like? The exact same. So if we go to game, it looks just the same. It does. I think I changed the text slightly so that you could tell it was different, but this is basically the same thing. But it's going to be much easier to maintain going forward, especially when we start adding like CSS files. So Let me see. Nope. What was I doing? No, I don't need that terminal. I need this terminal. Okay. Now I'm going to run ahead a little bit just to see what we have coming up. Sure. Now this one, all I did was add Bootstrap. Now, if you don't know what Bootstrap is awesome if you're not like design-minded like me, because it goes in it. If you're like I'm not design-minded like whatsoever. I round corners, and that's about as far as I go. What you can do with Bootstrap is you can take it and it will, first of all, it'll style a bunch of stuff you never think to style. But it also gives you a framework that you can get things to like show up in blocks correctly, that they're all like aligned. It'll do things like center, which, you know, is really hard, like stupidly hard in CSS for some reason. And it's a way, and it also makes it responsive and all that. So I ended up adding Bootstrap. But I think we can just go to this one because you don't need to see, like, I literally downloaded Bootstrap and added it to the repository just because I didn't want to have to maintain that bit of it. So I'm going to like totally alias checkout. Okay. Now at this point we have one block, but you can actually have multiple blocks in your like base.html or whatever you want to call it. So I have, you know, here we have base.html, and I've added another block, page title, and content. So I can have like the title is in one space, the content is in another, and then we will update. This is just to show how you can do multiple blocks. So here in game.html, instead of just saying everything goes into content, now we have some stuff going to the page title, some stuff going to content, which can really help out if you have later on a designer comes in and is like, no, our title is now going to go, you know, in this section over here, and then there's all this other stuff in between, and then the content instead of, you know, title content like we had it 2 years ago. Or they'll smush everything together, or suddenly the title runs down the side of the page, which was popular for a while. You can just say, okay, whatever, I've already separated everything out, just change the base.html and everything will work out. And once again, if we run this, it will not appear any different. So if we go to here and reload it or hit run, that reloads it. Like, still does not look any different. Although, oh yeah, it does look different because look at that, Bootstrap. Bootstrap chose much nicer fonts for me. And you can add Bootstrap. If you go to getbootstrap.com, I think it's that Bootstrap. Give me Bootstrap. You can download it, or you can just grab like CDN links for it, which is what I do for many things, unless I really know that I really want to download it. So see here. These are and I'll actually add these to the showcase. Showcase. This takes a surprisingly long time. There, to add a link. So, you know, super easy. So basically we've learned, you know, you can put variables into templates, you can do, you know, for loops and templates, you can create blocks and you can separate out your templates so they can inherit from each other, and you can have multiple blocks in a template. So that's where we are now. And we are at 11:38, so we're doing pretty good. So let's go back here. And I'm just putting it in the chat. Ooh, wrong thing. Just getting the commit again. And there it is. I'm going to pop up ahead again. Git checkout master. So we're going in the future. Git log online to see what else we have. At this point, we're going to be adding a requirements file. Now we already have a requirements file in this repository. So I'm going to show you what it is, but you would generally create this if you had like your own project you were starting from scratch. And we'll go over what that is. Because in reality, you're learning about a few things today. You're learning about Flask, but you're also learning about pip and you're learning about Git. So it's in Cloud9. Git checkout. All right. Now we used pip way at the beginning of the class at like 9:45 to install Flask. We did pip install Flask, and it installed the extra stuff it needed because pip went out to PyPy, said I want to install Flask, and PyPy said, here is all the stuff you need for Flask. You need Flask, you need this other stuff, you need this stuff. Here's everything you need. Now, if you're working on your local machine, it can get very easy very quickly to suddenly run into the point where it's like, why isn't this working on this other machine? I want to work on this other machine, like a server. What's going on here? And then you realize that you installed something on your local machine and didn't install it on the other machine. I ran into this just this week, that I was trying to do a deploy and it ran up with an error of like, cannot find this, you know, this thing. And fortunately, I've been coding for a while, so I was like, I forgot to update the requirements file. So whenever you build to many services, like if you build to Heroku, if you like push up your site, it looks for a requirements.txt file, and it'll go through everything in the file and install it. Now let's go over what the file looks like. We've created a new one, and I'll actually just go ahead, since that's all we've added, I'm going to bring it up in here. So the requirements file is in the base, like, of your directory, at the lowest level. And what it has the name of the thing that you are installing, and then it has equals equals, and it has numbers, and that's the version we want to do. And if you ever work in, you know, coding, always do, this is called pinning the version. Pin the freaking version, always. I once worked somewhere where they're like, why would you pin it? You know, you want to get all the latest stuff, just have it update every time that we deploy the site. And then we had the site crash horrifically because sometimes you get an update that's not compatible with your code. So always pin the version. This is also a good way because you can look at the requirements file and say, what's out of date? So here we have, Flask, what the form, Jinja 2, markup safe, WT forms, worksug, arg parse, it's dangerous, WizGear. There's a bunch of things that got installed as I was going along. Now the good news is that you do not have to actually generate this file on your own. So you don't have to go through and try to remember what you had installed. In your console, you can type pip freeze. And it just spits everything out for you. Now, one thing you should know is that look at all this stuff that's installed. This is not all stuff that we installed. So on your local, it's much more sensible if you're on like your machine in the virtual environment, you will know what's installed. This is everything that is installed via pip on Cloud9. So it's a lot of stuff. I wouldn't recommend just putting this into your requirements file, but it can help you kind of get an idea of like, okay, I can see what's installed. And I'll show you a much more sensible one that you would see on your local machine. So here I am on, this is my work machine. And this is my terminal window. And if I do a pip freeze here, this is much more sensible. Actually, I'm going to clear and do it again. This is much more sensible. This actually looks like what I have installed. And it's a large application, so there is a lot here, but you can say I have Django, Markdown, Pillow, some stuff for like doing stuff with images, some like weird stuff with, a bunch of Django stuff that I have installed, GraphViz, Unicorn, that kind of stuff. I have a lot of things that are installed, but I can take this and basically save it to a requirements file. Now, that's nice, but you can also, if you get somebody else's project and they have a requirements file, you can take that requirements file and install it and use it to install all the things. And the way you would do that, here I need to use sudo. And sudo is basically do this as an administrator because that's how Cloud9 works. I wouldn't recommend using sudo on like your personal machine or your work machine. That's just how you do it. And you should always know why you're typing sudo. Like, I have to do that in this instance. Don't just type it because it's like, maybe it'll work if I do sudo. Know why you're doing it. It's a really easy way to screw up your machine. So sudo pip install -r for requirements.txt. If I hit enter, it'll start, da, 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 it's going out and grabbing everything and installing it. If it's already installed, it'll skip it. So don't worry about that it's going to take you 2 hours because there's so many things. It's going to skip over everything it doesn't actually need. And I think that it actually did not install anything because I had previously run this file. So that's how you would install from a requirements file. Requirements files are super common today. If you go out and just go to GitHub and look at projects, they almost always have a requirements file. It's very rare you have something that'll say, oh yeah, I just run on pure Python, whatever. Everybody almost always is using something else in the community. So I'm going to put this. So to recap, you want a requirements file because it helps you move from machine to machine. So when you move to a server, you have everything that you need to install. If your friend wants to run it, they can now run it. If a coworker needs to run it, they can run it. If your machine dies, which that happens, you can get your system up and running really quickly. So use requirements files. They're good for you. Now at this point, go ahead and run the command. And I'm going to type it up here. Oh, I do actually want you to install this. So let us look, what's the next step? Going back to master. Let's see. Now at this point, we're actually going to make something of a game, like the worst lotto game ever. So, as you can see, it's getting to the end of the class and my fingers are starting to give out. Like, no, I'm not typing anything correctly anymore. Okay. So at this point, now the reason why we did all that stuff, like adding in a requirements file, is because we were adding forms. And Flask recommends that if you want to work with forms, they're like, go and use this thing. They don't build it in because it is supposed to be a lightweight framework. And forms can be trickier than you think for, whatever reason. That there's lots of like ways that in order to make them secure, you need to have, cross-scripting protection. I actually had a website at a previous job. They didn't protect their forms. So you could basically hijack their form and use it to send email, which sounds like, why would you want to do that? Well, apparently spammers got a hold of, like, some Brazilian spammers got a hold of this form, realized it was exploitable, and realized that they could basically use the form to send out their spam. So it was funny because these poor guys were like, yeah, our site gets millions of hits like a day, unlike yours. And we're just like, that's really weird because this is not all that great of a site. It's a good site, but I wonder why it's not at the top level of NASA, whatever. And it was because of the spammers. The second we shut down that security, their hits went. But that's why you need secure forms. And getting the data from the form and all that. You might as well outsource that to a separate app because we like separate pluggable apps that we can just, plug in, plug out. So one of the things we did is in init.py, we added something to app. So we have app config from object config. So we're adding a config somewhere. And, Git just shows us things in order, not necessarily the order that makes sense for us. We are creating a new Python file called forms.py. And we're importing form, text field, Boolean field, required, and we're creating a form. So class getLucky form, and numbers is going to equal a text field that'll accept that's labeled numbers. This will make more sense as we actually use it. So we're basically creating a form that we can reuse. We can reuse all over the site. Like we could call it comment and add comments to all the pages. It could be mini poll, and it could have mini polls all over all the pages. To views, we are importing our form, which is called getLucky. And here we are actually creating a page for it. So app.rat nums, we have two methods because forms have two methods, get or post. So, or pages have two methods, get or post. We're either, posting information to it, or getting information from it. The form is called getLucky, and we're going to return the template getLucky, and the form is going to equal the form. This is a lot of stuff that I'm throwing in, which is why this is actually a form to nowhere. It's not going to do anything yet. Now here, we finally have our config that we mentioned earlier. We've created a file called config.py. We are enabling CSRF, cross-scripting something something. I forget what the R is. CSRF. Cross-site request forgery. There it is. I always forget. Even though this is like my job and I do this every day. And we've given it a secret key. So basically, the thing using the form needs to know our secret key, which, by the way, never put that in a repository. Mine's in the repository because this is a very simple class that I don't care if it's shown, but in your repository, this config file should not be on GitHub. It should be somewhere, you know, like in somewhere that it's safe and away from prying eyes. So you would never want to have this secret key shown to anybody, because if they know the secret key, they can use your form to send, you know, South American spam. So I know it's a lot of stuff that I just threw at everybody, but the end of the story is basically we're adding a form that's not going to do anything. So first we need to reload. Reload. And then I believe it was in nums. Oh no! We got an error. Is it nums? Yeah, it's nums. Oh no, this didn't happen earlier. Well, let's see if we can figure out what the error is. And one of the ways we can do that, I'm going to... Now, if I look here, I don't actually see what the error was, but one thing I can do in run.to, debug, I believe this is how you add this. Oops, I keep doing that. Reload. Debug. I tell you, my fingers are like rebelling at this point. They've been typing too long. Run it. Okay. Okay, we're running it. Template not found. Oh. Now what I did there is I went to run.py and I added debug equals true into that, in a comma, into that big thing to figure out what was going on. So we do not have a lucky.html. So let's go back and check out my templates. And they're right, there is no lucky.html. I am betting that I added this the next time. So what I'm going to do now, it master log yep, look at the next commit. Adding a form, forgot the template. It checkout. And I'm going to check to make sure this actually runs, so I'll reload. Yay, okay. So I'm going to put these all up here. And at this point, if I add, 4 to, 4, 3 to 24, whatever, submit, it doesn't actually do anything. That's why it's a form to nowhere. It's not, the data's not going anywhere. I didn't tell it to do anything. And if we look at the form real fast, so git diff, one in the past, bring this up. Here's the get lucky form. It extends base.html. We put the title, lucky number game, in the title, and the block content just has a form. The form has no action, so it's empty quotes. The method is post because we're actually posting information somewhere. The name of the form is get lucky. We have a hidden tag. That's our secret way to keep it safe. We have numbers, label for numbers, lucky numbers, and then we have form numbers. So form is an object, and it is a form object, and it has one field called numbers. That's where we're going to spit that out. So we don't actually say like, oh, here is the, we don't have to actually create the HTML for that. We just say, yeah, put that here. Put the form numbers here, whatever it is, which can be useful because so you have text fields and text area, and that's one of those things that goes back and forth during design phases. This makes it very easy that if you have a bunch of forms that you had text fields, which is the little skinny ones, and suddenly somebody comes out and says, oh no, they need to all be text areas of this size, you can just change it in one place. And that'll propagate through the entire system. So, and then we have a submit, because you usually want to submit on your forms. So now, right now this form isn't doing anything. So we want it to actually do a thing. And I have 2 minutes to get it to do a thing. So check out master, git log, online. Oh, so we're just going to skip ahead and I'm going to show you some code. Oh my God. Until my fingers are getting so tired. All right. So I'm actually showing you 2 commits in the past. I skipped ahead too. Because what we want to do is we want to take those numbers and we want to actually do something with them. So here, we changed up game.html. So the winning numbers, we show the winning numbers and we added your numbers and how many times you won. Now we don't know how we're getting these numbers yet, but we'll get to that. Here, we've updated views. So now we're also importing request. So we're importing render template and request because we're going to get information from the request. We have a function. Now notice this function is not decorated. It's just a normal function. You can totally have all the regular functions that can be called to keep your code nice and clean. Not every function in your Flask app needs to be decorated, needs to be a view. So get game nums. We have an empty array called game nums. Then we get some random, we get some game numbers. And then we have the game itself, which is decorated, which is for the game. We get some game numbers and we return render template game.html with the game nums. So I actually split out a bunch of that logic. Then we have nums. And this is where a lot of the magic is going to come in. So if the request method is post, that means information was sent to me. The numbers are going to be whatever information was in the form. Now keep in mind that data is going to be in a string, so we're going to have to do some wrangling with that. My game numbers are get game nums. We're calling get game nums and we're getting those numbers. Nums equals the numbers.split. What split does is it splits everything up by default by spaces, which is how everything should have been split up. We set wins to 0. For every number in numbers that was given to us, so every one of your numbers, if the integer value of the number is in game nums, we add 1 to the wins. And then we return, once we're all done with that, once we've checked all the numbers, we return render template game.html with the game numbers set to the game numbers, the player numbers set to numbers, and the wins set to wins. If the request method is equal to get, so we haven't actually posted any data, we're just bringing up the page, then we're going to instead put up the form. So just to bring, if we actually just load the page, we're going to get a form. If we send information to the page, we're going to get how many wins we got. So we can make some decisions based on whether we want to actually, whether we got data or whether we didn't get data. So let's run this. No, I didn't want to run. No, wait, I do want to run you. Okay. So first I'm going to reload. Yeah, that's fine. Come on. And I'm going to have 2, 4, 6, 3, and 1. Submit. The winning numbers were 1, 6, 2, 7, 4. My numbers were 2, 4, 6, 3, and 1, and I got 4 wins off of that. So that is the actual working game. And at this point, we are out of time. I believe, how long does this run? Let me pull up Meetup. Come on, when was the end time? Was it 12 or 12:30? Oh, it runs 12:30. Okay, so at this point, we have a working game. And I'm going to check real fast to see if we have, come on. There we are. Any Q&A? Ah, good. Okay, so we do have some Q&A. So I'm going to start answering some Q&A. So first, from Marcella, is there a reason for putting the trailing slash on the route? Can you just put slash game? I don't think there's any particular reason for the trailing slash. I think you can just put slash game if that's how you prefer. I know some people might even want to fake like an HTML site like index.html or something like that. So I don't think you need to have the trailing slash. That's a habit of mine that I got from my Django work and from my Plone days and all of that, that the convention generally is that you don't pretend there's a page there, you just use directories to show information. So done with that. And the next one is from Erica. Erica asks, if you have time, could you talk a little about the run file and hosting? For example, say I wanted to have this site up and running all the time. What would I need to do? Great, this is just what I was going to plan on going over now. There are many hosting options. One of the easiest is Heroku. And Heroku does have free options. So let me go to Heroku. And this is, again, not paid to, talk about them or anything, don't work for them. I do have friends that work there, but it's the Python world, it's small. I have friends that work at all these places. So basically with Heroku, it's a managed service provider, and it can feel a little complicated when you get started because you do need to install a few things like the Heroku tool belt, but at the end of the day, it also makes it super easy just to get up and have it running. So let me move my face, move face. No, move. There we go. I'm gonna log in. So I can show you ScreenSign. ScreenSign is a personal Heroku instance that I have. It's this silly thing. That thing. So this is ScreenSign, and what you can do is like when you sign up for Heroku, which is free, you can choose to create a new app. So if I go to Heroku, let's see, where's the, can go to add. And it'll basically walk you through the steps of creating something. And once you have it created, it'll also walk you through. So let's see. Bring up ScreenSign again. It'll also, if you go to deploy, it'll walk you through how to get set up on your local machine. You can connect through GitHub, you can connect through Dropbox, however you want to do it. So, and as I said, it says, here's the code, copy and paste it, it will work. And they have really excellent support, but they're not the only option. You do have, like, this will keep running, this site, it will just keep going, you know. So you could always, if you wanted to share it as something really casual, you could share it that way. Other Flask hosts, if you like maintaining your own server, Rackspace is, another option if you are okay with setting everything up on your own. They are not a free option. And actually, I'm going to look up real fast because things are constantly adding, like places I know are constantly adding features. So let me see. Flask hosting. And of course, I'm happy with Heroku, so that's kind of where I stopped. Python Anywhere is another place. That's right. Python Anywhere is a great place. And I love Python Anywhere as well. So yeah, and they'll actually walk you through another tutorial. So they are also really awesome. And a blathering dolt likes them. So that would be my recommendations. Python Anywhere is awesome. Heroku is great, especially if you think that you're going to scale up and need to all of a sudden use your site more often or like actually make it a professional presence. Heroku is a really good option. If you are a sysadmin and don't mind maintaining your own servers, Rackspace is always a solid option. So let's see. And for most of them, like what would you need to do? Most of what you need to do is first of all, take that config out of your, directory completely and change all the values in case anybody grabbed it. And you would need to follow the directions for each of the services because each of the services has its own particular desires, like how they want you to do it, especially Heroku. Heroku is very much, you do things the Heroku way. So you would want to follow their instructions. So, oh, right. Can you host GitHub as a Pages site? Um, I think. All right. So I'm going to see if we can use GitHub Pages. So Pages Flask. Maybe. I don't know. I've only ever used it. Oh, look at that, you can. I've only ever used it to do static HTML pages because I'm lazy and I'm just like, I just want to put the pages somewhere. But it looks like, yes, you can. Here is a tutorial for it that's recent enough. So as usual, you often have to set up things like your configuration. If you are using forms or any kind of security thing, you'll need to set it up how they like, or they're going to have like, it needs to be in a specific structure, especially GitHub Pages. Um, Especially GitHub Pages, definitely wants everything in a specific directory. So you want, like, it's looking for everything in a certain place. So here they have, this is how they set it up, and it's always going to look a little bit more difficult when you're going to production because that's always just a different move. But GitHub Pages are free and they are super fast. I do enjoy using them. So, and this one looks like it's doing a whole like app because it's adding like templates and stuff like that. Um, the important part, yeah, is probably just using the branch GH pages because you can create a branch on your GitHub repo called GH pages and that will just be served. So that I especially, okay, cool. That's good to know. I did not know that. So my phone buzzed me. Let me see if somebody was trying to get me. So are there any more questions? Some of the other stuff you can do with Flask, you can use databases. I tend to not to because at the point when I need databases, I'm usually happier moving over to Django. And we do have a Django class coming up, which you can't sign up for yet, but I can open it now. So the people that are here know about it. PyLadies. PyLadies. As you can see, I usually edit. I usually set these to not open up until later, but I figure I can open this one now. Now, there we go. There. So that is now open if you want to go and actually sign up for it. And that'll be on April 26th. Now, we'll also be using Cloud9 for that because getting Django set up on a bunch of different machines is heinous, especially since I'm the only Windows person in the group who knows how to deal with Windows. So we'll also be using Cloud9 for that. And in that one, we're going to be creating a recipe app. Now, we're going to be able to get to a certain point. And oh, let me go ahead and put that in the chat. For that class, we'll see how far we get. It's probably going to have to be multiple classes because Django is something that it can be very easy to get up and running with and get going with, but there's also some complicated bits that it can get complicated pretty quickly. So that is the next class, and I'll probably be doing another Intro to Python class pretty soon too. So that is all I have at the moment. I'll stay on for the next 15 minutes if people have questions or want to submit them. But thank you all very much for joining me. And let me know what you thought of Cloud9. It does take a lot of pain for me because I can now see your monitors and see your code and try to fix things. We did have that one error that I wonder if that ever got resolved itself. Let me see. I'm just going to bring that up and see if I can see if it's working now. And I might email, yeah. I wonder, stop? It shouldn't. And I'll try to email them to figure out what exactly is going on here, so next time I'll be able to fix that. But it does help me quite a bit. Being somebody who, is trying to do this remotely and likes to see screens and does not want to have to set up everybody's environment because that can be a real pain. Like I cannot emphasize that enough. I get like horrible backaches from leaning over screens. And hopefully we'll have some, we have PyCon is coming up. I don't know who's coming to PyCon. And we'll have a PyCon review because both Jackie and I are going to PyCon. And we can do a review of like talks we saw there. And that's all I have at the moment. So I'm going to mute myself and eat a cookie. Also, if you want to suggest a class, feel free to send us, like just go to DC PyLays and I think you can just contact YM when I see a different thing than you. Because I think that we could really use like a GitHub and a Git kind of session. So, and I want to put together, a PyCon review of all the great stuff that's at PyCon and, try to convince more of all of you to come with us next year. But yeah, feel free to submit any kind of, suggestion that you want, what class you would like us to do. Especially going in the future, that we have an easier way of doing this. Oh, yay! That's what I thought was the problem. Yeah, if you run the wrong files, and that's one thing that you have to watch out for when you're using really anything, but especially Cloud9, is that if you hit run on the wrong file, you can get all kinds of weird stuff going on. So. And the class actually does, is it recorded? Ah, yes. Yes, this class was recorded. So I will post the link to that because it has to render and everything. Because it takes a while for it to render and everything and to upload. So yes, once I stop the broadcast, it will actually save everything so you can go back and watch it. And actually with this, if you look at it through the Google Plus link, it'll have all the links to all the stuff that I, had in the showcase and the Q&A questions and stuff, because you can actually fast forward to the Q&A questions, which we didn't have as many this time, but sometimes we have a bunch. And yay, I'm so glad so many people were able to keep up. Your first framework is always your hardest. Because so many things need to be in place at the same time. You need to have the right things installed. You need to have, you run the right file and have the right environment variables and have everything perfectly aligned. Unlike Python where you're import it and just mess around and do whatever. Once you get, and that's why I like to teach Flask first rather than Django first. Because if you learn Flask first, you learn kind of some of the ideas of where things go. And then at some point you kind of grow to the point where you're like, okay, but I really want to do what's it called? Lots of database stuff and lots of this other stuff. And that's the point where, okay, maybe you want to look at, if you want to have users and authentication and things like that, moving to Django's at that point, but you already have the language for it. And it's going to look very similar when we do that class. So I wonder if anybody's signed up yet. Oh, and the next class we have, reading we have, asynchronous Python with web apps and WebSockets. It's going to be on March 17th. It's on a Tuesday, and it's a combination. It's not just Pilates. We're doing it with, I think, Python DC. So it's both of us are doing it together. So basically how to do lots of non-synchronous stuff. If you're just starting off with web development, it might be good to go to get an idea of where you can go. That's kind of past Flask, past Django. This is way farther out when you're dealing with lots of data coming in and out. And look, we already have 7 people signed up for Django. Yay! I know this one is going to get, I'm totally going to have volunteers for this one. Because everybody's been asking for, I think, 3 years that they've wanted me and Jackie to do a Django class. Now, if you look at the code for my class, I actually went farther. Let me look at the commits. I usually only go to forms because that seems like a good stopping place for this. But I even have custom validation. I think after this, I stopped. Oh, that's right. I had planned to do database stuff, but then realized I was going to kind of a crazy place because then I have to explain databases because the way Flask works with databases is not like how Django works with databases. You have to use SQL Alchemy, I think. I've not used Flask with databases just because at that point, as I said, I normally just move over to Django because I'd much rather just do it there. I'm more comfortable there. We had some errors and validations and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more that's going on. And let's see. Django class. I'm trying to find. They were actually using a class from PyLadies Atlanta. Is what the next one will be from, but I don't see. It's out there somewhere. So we'll be making a recipe thing because that's actually a really good place to start. Because you have to store different materials and all that and associate them and that kind of stuff. Okay, at this point, it looks like I don't have any questions and everybody's dropping off. So everybody have a very good afternoon. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you next time.